I absolutely love movies. I love the way they have the ability to transport their viewers to different times, different places, and different feelings, and perspectives that one wouldn't normally be able to think about on a daily basis. To me, films are a form of art. I didn't always think this way, however. Until about age 20, I thought films were made for and meant to be viewed as a form of entertainment, really to help me escape from reality. Sort of like a glossy fiction that could help me forget the thought of impending college finals for about an hour and a half. But in the summer of 2017, something changed my perception. One film that really drove home that film could mimic reality and pull such a deep emotion out of me that it actually changed the way I viewed the world and behaved after viewing. That film obviously is Luca Guadagnino's Call Me By Your Name.
Eyes closed, eyes closed, head down, eyes closed, ice cold, meltdown.
It's hard to put into exact words what exactly draws me to this film so deeply without covering a few different bases. All I can really say to begin is that the essence that it gives off, the dreamy, comforting, almost mysterious world it brings us into, it deeply resonates with me on many levels each time I rewatch and embark on it. At its core, Call Me By Your Name is a film adaptation of the 2007 novel of the same name, written by Andre Aciman. The screenplay is written by famous director James Ivory, and the movie itself is directed by Luca Guadagnino as his final installment into the aptly titled Desire thematic film trilogy. This trilogy includes 2009's I Am Love and 2015's A Bigger Splash. So the story doesn't follow the typical narrative timeline, basically being like one day passing into the next. This becomes pretty apparent from the beginning, and you can kind of feel it as you watch different scenes of the movie. You can see these just really slow, meandering summer days, and a really lazy vibe that comes off of the way Guadagnino chooses to set up the scenes. It's definitely a different pace from the fast-humored romantic comedies we're used to in the US. Instead, we follow Elio during different key moments of his summer vacation. Their purpose might not be easy to spot at first, but the missing key here is desire. Basically, we're getting an intimate look at Elio's journey into self-discovery and growth. His quest to follow desire, wherever that may lead him. I mentioned earlier that this film was based on a novel. Now, Elio in the novel is written as a narrator looking back on his summer many years later, all at once a horny, lovelorn teen as well as a mature adult, with the capacity to turn that horniness into some poetic prose. This ability to hear his thoughts in the moment doesn't translate very well to film, so instead we as viewers have to rely on each character's micro-expressions, Elio's most of all, to get a read on what they're thinking. And micro-expressions are a subtle thing. This film is all about subtlety in the way that we need to pay close attention to each character's expressions, actions, and tone rather than the overall direction the film is going. A touch, a gaze, even an item glanced at can hold depths. Each scene takes its time on purpose. We're meant to focus on each character's interactions with each other and see them as these precious, delicate little snapshots in time that paint a bit bigger picture once viewed all together. So it wouldn't be wrong to call Elio a self-conscious, impulsive, and sometimes selfish character, but honestly, that's what makes him more human, more realistic in my eyes. I think that love and desire are naturally very selfish feelings, but at the same time, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We have all been pretty awful at times in our lives for moments we believe justify a little selfishness, and seeing it portrayed in a young, inexperienced, and very eager Elio pulls something out of us, mostly a sense of empathy. Where Elio's characterization at times may be bold, Oliver's is a lot more reserved. I've always thought Timothée Chalamet's acting eclipsed Army's quite a bit until I took a closer look at Oliver's personality. If Timothy is a waterfall, then Army as Oliver is a quiet stream. He does a beautiful job at catching Oliver's tiny personality quirks in a way that's quite charming and at times hard to spot. You may not even catch it in the first viewing to Timothy's intense portrayal, but trust me, it's worth a rewatch to see Army play off of Timmy's acting. I also want to mention that all the secondary characters, mostly the roles of Elio's parents as well as his childhood friend Marzia, are interpreted fantastically. I don't want to give too much away, but Elio's mom and dad really do steal the show at times. Now, Timmy and Army weren't actually cast for their looks, but instead for their real-life personalities, which may explain why Oliver looks like a 30-something father of two and not a 24-year-old grad student, as he's described in the book. Timmy was immediately cast by Luca at the age of 17, which is 3 years before filming began, fresh out of New York's famous LaGuardia Performing Arts High School for his similarity in personal life to that of Elio's. Timothée Chalamet comes from a French father and American mother and grew up spending his school years in New York and summers in France with older sister and French actress Pauline Chalamet, basically being a real-life goofy Elio. Army, on the other hand, was cast about 6 months before principal photography for Call Me By Your Name began in the summer of 2016. Rumor has it that Shia LaBeouf was also up for the role of Oliver in the film, and believe me, I would pay a large sum of money to see that alternate universe. Army has this very emotionally available je ne sais quoi about him that's very difficult to find in most straight male actors. He actually had to be convinced to take on the role of Oliver by Luca before he agreed to it. As filming began, Luca decided to use a 35mm film to roughly mimic the feel of human eyesight and to give the audience not only a view of the actors, but also a view of the gorgeous scenery around them. When watching the film, you might notice that the film has a slightly grainy, soft look to it. This is very much intentional, as Luca really wanted the film to seem as if it was a memory to be looked back on, almost as though each memory wasn't completely in focus, but has a very nostalgic feel to it. Each setting is meant to invoke a sense of desire and beauty. Half the reason I love this film is how absolutely breathtaking each scene is, be it urban, at home, or in nature. I hate to call the way Luca films voyeuristic, but it definitely has this quality to it that makes us feel as though we're going on this intimate journey with Elio together, at times even looking through his line of sight or peering over his shoulder. It's just one of those details that makes the film even more lifelike in quality. Another aspect that gives the film its sense of charm is the hand-picked soundtrack that Luca chose. A mix of 80s pop music from England, France, America, and Italy that puts us right into the time period. Each song is specifically chosen for the message that their lyrics portray, mostly about following your heart and how difficult a task that can be. Also, oh my god, I cannot believe they included Ella Vita in the soundtrack, like that song wasn't played at every garden party my Italian grandmother hosted during my childhood. My grandmother is obsessed with Marco Armani. Nice touch, Luca. I think the crown jewel of the soundtrack, though, is definitely the 3 songs by literal angel fallen from heaven and king of emotional vulnerability, Sufjan Stevens. Each song is meant to reflect Elio's inner thoughts during certain moments in the film. I recommend paying close attention to the lyrics as the songs play for insight into Elio's true personality. The first is a delicate reimagining of his 2010 Age of Ads hit Futile Devices, and the second and third are songs Sufjan wrote specifically for Call Me By Your Name, entitled Mystery of Love and Visions of Gideon. If you haven't heard these songs yet, please don't listen to them before viewing the movie. They're much more impactful in the moment. Sufjan isn't really known for writing songs for collaborations, and especially not for writing film music. But Luca Guadagnino stated that all that was needed to change Sufjan's mind was one read-through of the novel. The story had that profound of an impact on him. After his reading and during filming of the movie, Sufjan sent over the 3 songs to Luca, and Luca, in turn and on the spot, created scenes tailor-made for the use of all 3. Both Timothy and Armie have also stated that playing the roles of Elio and Oliver was such a profound experience for them, and that their time spent in Italy was a life-changing experience only in positive ways. So what exactly is it about the story that's moved Sufjan, Armie, Timmy, and many others to claim that this story changed their perspective on life? Well, I mentioned it a couple of times earlier, and it's actually very simple. It's vulnerability. There's this line spoken in the film by a secondary character that almost seems like sort of a throwaway statement, but in reality I think it's Luca Guadagnino speaking directly to us. Film is a mirror of reality, and it is a filter. I'll use my own experience to explain this. I find a lot of parallels between my own childhood and Elio's. I was the only child living in both my mother and father's households, and was often incredibly bored because of this during the summer times. During my teen years, my mom would often rent our spare rooms out to single renters, and this was really the only source of excitement for me while I was living there. At my dad's house, on the other hand, I was subjected to many boring and fancy weekend dinners with our Italian extended family. However, what I did not experience during these teen years was an ability to be vulnerable, both physically and emotionally. Both of my parents had the thought that being mature meant being able to compartmentalize your emotions, and that crying was in itself a sign of weakness, that it wasn't okay to share our true feelings with one another. This made someone who felt as deeply and as vulnerably as I did feel as though there was something fundamentally wrong with the way I dealt with highly emotional situations. With this sort of emotionally stunted upbringing, though, it may come as a shock to know that I truly believe that there's more bravery in allowing yourself to truthfully express your emotions in a situation where you're prone to judgment from others, as opposed to bottling it up and never considering that kind of vulnerability in the first place. But seriously, how did I change my mind and come to this conclusion? Well, that brings me back to the previous quote. Film is a mirror and it is a filter. When watching Call Me By Your Name for the first time, for all of the similarities I found in Elio's life that mirrored my own, an even more important contrast stood out to me.
I like the way you say things. I don't know why you're always putting yourself down, though.
So you won't, I guess?
You really that afraid of what I think?
The vulnerability, empathy, and openness that each character in the story showed one another. It's almost jaw-dropping how emotional the story allows its characters to be, whether in happiness, frustration, or sadness. Allowing oneself to be vulnerable in situations where it would be easier to withdraw is what makes this story so unique. And it's not as if Luca or the story itself presents this in an easy task. Quite the opposite, actually. But if the characters can do it, what's stopping me or others from trying in some small way? That's exactly what I thought after viewing, and it really, truly did change my outlook on life for the better. Finding people that allow you to emotionally open up without judgment or fear is a really rare thing, and having the courage to do so with others is even rarer. When you watch this film, my hope for you is that you view it with a sense of vulnerability and empathy for the characters. This is a journey for Elio, and not one that is very easy. By viewing his decisions in an empathetic light and seeing how his actions may reflect those you've taken in your own personal life, I really do feel like you'll see why I myself and so many others find this to be such a profound coming-of-age story. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. It meant a lot to me to do this video, and I've always wanted to do it, but I feel like I took 2 years too long. I'm happy to have it finally done, and I'm excited to maybe do more in the future. But yeah, thank you so much, and I hope you guys enjoyed it.